Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist, gastroenterologist Steve Schutz, and I'm here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran, and we've got a really great show today. This is a first, Stephan. We have a surprise guest. I have no idea who it is. I know her name is Julie, but that's it.
That's just the way I want it to be. I want this to be totally off the cuff, spontaneous for you. This was for me on Wednesday this week. So I wanted you to have the same experience that I did on spontaneous, and I think it's going to generate some wonderful conversation. It's going to close the loop, like we talked in Siren when we did automotive research. This is going to kind of close the loop for a lot of what I've talked about in the last 68 podcasts on automotive safety.
Yeah, Stephan, that's really why we did it. I mean, we're the only automotive podcast that has a trauma surgeon who has done operations on countless car crash victims. That's what the intro says, but also is a car nut. I think we're unique in that regard. So this is going to be exciting. I can't wait. I'm really curious. I don't know what you've hatched up here, Stephan, but I'm definitely excited. Before we get there, a couple things I want to talk about. Le Mans ended this morning. We're not going to talk about it today. We'll talk about it next week. And we're going to talk about what's selling, what's not selling. And then, of course, we get to your special guest and what's selling and not selling. Stephan, I'm going to say this quickly. Last week, we talked about platform sharing, and you mentioned that a bad platform sharing combination was the Fiat 500, not a good car, combined with the Jeep Renegade. Not a good Jeep.
Not a good car. Yeah, not a good Jeep.
Not a good Jeep. So you mentioned that, and then almost as if the universe listened to you, I read this online today in two different sources. The Jeep Renegade has a 753-day supply of Renegades on dealer lots. That means if they don't make any more and they don't sell any more Jeep Renegades at all, they don't send any more to the dealers, it'll take them 2 years to clean out their lots.
That's almost as long as the Cadillac Lyric. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a shit box for a car. Both of them are. And I mean, who wants them? They're going to deeply discount them. Somebody will buy them, but they're going to hang around the dealer lot. So they'll end up at the car rental place. But yeah,
it's a Sergio Marchionne machine. The late Sergio Marchionne ran Fiat Chrysler. Now, of course, is part of Stellantis. Adams, every time he hears that, smiles. Adams Hudson, we miss you. Sorry you're not here today. He's off in North Carolina at some cool car show that we're going to hear about. But anyway, Sergio Marchionne and Fiat Chrysler decided they want to keep factories going in Italy. So they turned the Fiat 500 into this Jeep Renegade. And it never was a real Jeep. I think it looks actually pretty good, but it's not a real Jeep. It's not an off-road thing. This is the opposite of a Wrangler. And here we are. The market has spoken. Nobody wants these things.
There you go. God rest in peace. They're done.
What?
That's it. They're done. The Fiat 500 and the Wrangler. I mean, they're done.
Okay, the Renegade.
The Renegade, whatever the hell.
Okay.
All right.
There's a lot of cars.
I'm thinking about my brain is already focused to the next segment. Sorry.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of cars that you're going to pay over MSRP for. The Jeep Renegade is
not one of them. Yes.
Not one of those cars. And then what is selling, Stephan? We talked about this 6 months ago, 9 months ago, and we said dudes, and of course the dudes we're talking to are Akio Toyota and the guy that took his place, I forgot his name, Sato, the Toyota people in charge. We said, hey, 2,500 Toyota GR Corollas, it's not enough for North America or the United States. It's not enough. And here's proof. Cars and Bids, they just sold a Toyota GR Corolla. Stephan, a Corolla.
I know, it's $79,000 for a Toyota Corolla. I couldn't believe it. That's insane.
I think it's a great car, but the MSRP on that is $51,000. It's the Maurizio version, so it's definitely the more rare, the cooler, the faster one. It's the track one. But come on, it's a $51,000 car. That is a 60% markup for, again, a Corolla. And I've said this about these cars. A good example is WRX STI. You take a Subaru Impreza and you turn it into something great. It's a great performer, but guess what? You're stuck. You're paying, in this case, $79,000 for, you get a lot of performance. It is a good car, but it's basically a $28,000 interior.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that just got to have what they want, and they're going to pay the big bucks for it. My buddy paid $5K over sticker to get the Ranger Raptor. I think $5K over, over a $60,000 sticker price. I wouldn't pay anything over MRSP, but people want it. But I think in 2 years, it's not going to be worth $80,000. Now, who knows? Maybe it will. I just can't believe it. But, Supras are going for well over 150K, 200,000. Who knows? I don't know. I
think
so,
this is a Toyota Ford Focus RS. And
yes,
even the Ford Focus RS maybe went for $5,000 over MSRP. This is $30,000 over MSRP. And I think you're right, Stephan. This is not going to be a valuable car in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years.
Nope.
I think maybe it'll be a $50,000 car in today's dollars, but no way it's 80,000. This guy's not getting his money out of this. He can wrap it in tinfoil and put it in his garage and not drive it an inch. And this is not going to be worth the equivalent of $80,000 today in 20 years.
No, it's absolutely crazy.
Anyway, that's what's selling, what not selling. And now off to our guest.
All right. Well, I'm going to introduce Julie Alt as our special guest today. And I'm going to begin by proselytizing once again and preaching about seatbelts. I had the honor to be invited to the New York Auto Show by former guest Gino Effler as a speaker for Volvo. And we made a movie on the 50-year history of the seatbelt, which came out in 1959 by Niels Bohlin. And it was a 3-point belt that we all have in our cars today. And there has been no single greater safety device that has saved more lives than the seatbelt. And Niels Bohlin and Volvo said, we're not going to patent this seatbelt. We want everybody to adapt this. So they chose not to patent it. They just gave the technology out and let everybody do it. Right now in the US, we have about 91.6% usage rate, which is pretty good. It should be 100%. In 2021, here's the interesting thing. 50% of unrestrained occupants were killed. So those that weren't wearing seatbelts, that were in wrecks, about 50% were, of the everybody that was killed in a car wreck, 50% were unrestrained. And nighttime, as you can imagine, that goes up to 57%. Figured in 2017, about 14,955 lives were saved. And they assume that about, looking at the data, an additional 2,549 could have been saved. So the benefits of buckling up are equally clear. But I got a friend of mine who's a fireman, retired cop. He won't wear a seatbelt. No, man, I've seen him cut him out too many times. I don't want to be in there when it catches fire, And I'm like, come on, dude, put your seatbelt on. But he won't wear it. But if you do wear your seatbelt, here's the interesting thing, that you reduce your risk of fatality by 45% by wearing a seatbelt, moderate to critical injury by 50%. You may save the life of the person that's the passenger in the vehicle with you, because you now have not lost control of the vehicle. And if you're in a light truck and you put your seatbelt on, you reduce your fatality risk by 60%, which is even bigger. So light trucks more so. And in moderate to critical injury in trucks is 65%. Well, there's a lot about myths about seatbelts. People say, I don't need a seatbelt because my car's got airbags. I got side bag. I got center bag. I got front bags. There's bags everywhere. I don't need, well, airbags are designed to work with the seatbelt. They are not designed to replace the seatbelt. The way that they deploy, it helps you ride down the ride down with the seatbelt at the time of impact. And then a lot of people think, well, I'm not going too far from the house. I'm just going down the road to the grocery store. I'm going to the convenience store. Oh, I'm not going to be going fast. I mean, I'm going to be in town. I'm be under 35. I don't need to wear seatbelts. They're not necessary. So listen to this. Remember this. I was coming home Wednesday. I was in the Bullet coming down Interstate, and I was going within 5 of the speed limit. So I was doing good. Had my seatbelts on, and a call comes up on the phone, and I've got the sync on, so it comes up on the dash. It says Louisville, Kentucky, and the number ended with 8400. I'm like, I usually don't answer calls unless a name pops up. And I'm thinking, the hell, Louisville, 8400. This sounds like it's probably somebody trying to sell me something. And I said, I'm going to answer this because I know somebody in Louisville, Steve Kelty, who's a great friend of mine. And I also do some medical legal work for a big law firm out Louisville. I said, maybe it's one of them. I'll answer it. And I say hello. And somebody on the other line might be Julie, our guest, says, is this Stephan Moran? And I said, yes. And then she says, is this Dr. Stephan Moran? And then I immediately replied, who is this? I was like, who is this? And so I have not spoken with Julie in 21 years, but she called me. And so welcome to our show, Julie Alt, who called me out of the blue. And she's going to close this circle on this story. So Julie, why don't you say hello and welcome to the show and take over from here. And I'm going to interrupt you during certain parts of it to add some more data, but welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's very exciting to see you. And I'm trying not to cry seeing you because it is such a special moment for me. I want to start by saying that for 5.5 years, I was a 911 operator. And as a 911 operator, the first thing that they teach us is the first 3 minutes of a call are the most important 3 minutes that we will deal with, because that is the time it takes to decipher whether or not we need to start CPR to save somebody's life. That course of 3 minutes never was more important to me than on May 30th of 2002. That week was Click It or Ticket week of all weeks. We had many visitors at 911. We had the state troopers brought us bumper stickers that said Click It or Ticket. Lifesaver helicopter brought us t-shirts. Air Evac came by just to say hello. That particular morning was 6 o'clock in the morning. I was wearing my Lifesaver t-shirt with my Click It or Ticket bumper sticker right next to me. And out of habit, I left the house at 6 o'clock in the morning without kissing my children. I normally did. That wasn't part of the habit. But I didn't kiss my children, didn't tell my husband goodbye because everybody was sleeping and I didn't want to wake them. And I headed out the door to work at 911. And a bad habit that I had was going less than 2 miles to the store down the road from my house without putting my seatbelt on. I would go to the store, buy some treats for the day, head down the mountain, and on my way down the mountain, put my seatbelt on. That day, I didn't make it to the store. Sorry. I had a rollover accident in a Chevy Blazer. I was partially ejected out the driver's side window. It rolled over me, crushed me, threw me. I landed in somebody's driveway who called 911. And they made those 3-minute decisions just to get a helicopter to me and fly me to UAB. During that time, believe it or not, I was in and out of consciousness. I didn't realize at the time that every rib was broken, that my lungs were punctured, that my pelvis was in 9 pieces, and that my heart, my aorta, had a hole the size of a quarter in it. I tried to raise up, and they told me to lay still. They put me on a stretcher, and I looked up, and it was my neighbor, was the ambulance driver. And I said, please don't let me die. And he said, I'm going to get your husband. I'm going to get Patrick. And I said, please don't let me die. And he said, I'm going to get Patrick. He wouldn't tell me that he wasn't going to let me die because he was scared that I was going to die. They flew me to UAB. My husband was 45 minutes away. My parents lived 15 minutes away. So they met the helicopter at the hospital. There was a wonderful, wonderful heart physician named Dr. Pacifico, who was an amazing doctor. He met my parents in the hallway, told them to sign some papers or I would die. He was very blunt. And he allowed them to kiss me as they ran me down the hallway in a gurney. And they took me to the OR while he was starving. My parents got to kiss me. And he began to do an aortic repair. During this time, it was shift change at 911. So a lot of our officers and a lot of our coworkers started coming up to the hospital. By the time he finished the surgery, I had about 30 people in the waiting room. And he came out and he said, you can go in and see her. They said, who? And he said, all of you, because he didn't think that I was going to make it. Sorry.
So let me just jump in here, Julie, so you can refresh a little bit. So listeners, what Julie was describing, that her injury is what's called a blunt aortic injury. And if you think about your heart, you've got your big aorta comes out of the heart, curved like a candy cane and goes down your body. and supplies your whole body. And right after it makes that curve where you've got the arteries that go to your head, neck, and your arms, the aorta transitions from being moving with the heart to becoming fixed, where it's actually kind of behind and fixed close to the spine. So in 1% of motor vehicle collisions and occupants, we get to see blunt aortic injury, but it is the second leading cause of death in blunt trauma and car wrecks. 80% of people who have Julie's injury never even make it to the hospital. They're what we call DRT, dead right there. They die in the field. 70% of these injuries are seen in motor vehicle collisions. We do see them in motorcycles as well as pedestrians and falls. And you can imagine that it takes a lot of energy and force to cause this injury in a patient. So patients like Julie that have this aortic injury also have a lot of other injuries. It's a terrible injury, but she was very fortunate. She mentioned Dr. Al Pacifico. So there's 3 ways to treat this injury. You can manage it with blood pressure. You can do surgery, and now a lot of times they do it what we call endovascular, where they site a graft. But Al Pacifico is a legend in cardiac surgery. And when I was there as attending, and by the way, I was Julie's doctor when she came in and took care of Julie. But I remember Al Pacifico, I'd heard about this man and his ability to operate, and I'm like, I got to see this for myself. So I scrubbed in with Al Pacifico, not on Julie's case, but several other cases. And to watch this man operate, he only had one scrub nurse that could operate with him. There was no word spoken. The man's eyes or hands did not move without accomplishing a task. It was truly to watch a maestro of a symphony. It was, I've never seen anybody operate. I mean, I considered myself when I retired a master surgeon, good, but those surgeons of technical just expertise, second to none other. Al Pacifico will go down in history. And think about it, you're taking this big aorta that supplies the blood to your whole body. And what Dr. Pacifico does is he puts the artery's blown out, like your hose has got a hole and it's blown out. He puts a clamp on each side, cuts out that piece of hose, and then sews in a little piece of hose graft in between. So imagine yourself, if you got to sew something about the size of a kielbasa, 2 end-to-end anastomoses, sewing 2 things, how long that would take you? Well, Dr. Pacifico's clamp time in Julie was 7 minutes, Steve-O. 7 minutes to sew an interposition graft in the aorta.
Damn.
Yeah, damn,
Incredible.
exactly. That's Steve. That's all he can think of. That's just phenomenal. And the reason that's so important is you think about, you're cutting off the blood supply to the entire body, including the artery of Adamkowitz, which supplies your spine. So a lot of these patients wake up paralyzed after this injury and surgery. So she was very fortunate that there's other great surgeons at UAB. Al Pacifico is the man. And I think, part of why Julie did so well long term was clamp minutes a 7 time, no bypass, none of that. He just goes in there, cuts it, fix it. And your operation was how long? You looked it up.
13 minutes.
13 minutes. I mean, the dude, I'm telling you, it's just, I watched him operate. It was just insane. So, and the reason this occurs, I've talked about this in a previous podcast, but there's 3 collisions that occur in a car wreck. So the car strikes the tree, then the car starts to slow down, then your body is then moving forward, and then you strike something in the car, like typically, let's say the steering wheel, the seatbelt. And then your heart continues to move until the heart hits the backside of your sternum. And that happens with all of our organs. So this is one of those injuries. This is the 3rd collision. A blunt aortic injury is a result of the 3rd collision and a massive deceleration that occurs. And then, we talked about 80% don't even make it to the hospital. Well, 1 out of 5 people die in the hospital with this injury.
Yeah, in this case, you could say it is actually a fourth collision, because that's the vehicle rolling over you.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. So, Julie is very fortunate. She did Air Med Care Network, which AirEvac. So listeners, if you don't have, you can buy helicopter insurance for $100 a year for you. And a family is not much more expensive. I have it for my family. My wife, we cashed in on hers. We got a bill for $45,000 after a horsing accident, and the helicopter bill was $45,000. We had the insurance that paid for it. A friend of mine's daughter was in a car wreck outside of Mobile. That paid for that. A friend of mine here at the lake had a heart attack. they had insurance. He was flown to UAB. Another friend had a spinal cord injury at the lake, was flown, and all had insurance. If you don't have the insurance, it's cheap. Get it for you and your family. And Julie is a survivor because of she was flown by helicopter and got to UAB so fast. So hopefully you've given you some time to regather, Julie. And I'm gonna give it. I was emotional as well listening to you, but I'm gonna give it back to you. There's just a lot of great story here, and a lot to talk
I
about.
appreciate that. Well, so after the heart surgery, he invited everyone in. My husband was met by a chaplain when he got there, because again, they didn't think I was going to make it. They had put my left leg in traction because of the broken pelvis. They were afraid of a femur bleed, so they had put my left leg into traction. They decided that if I made it through the first 24 or 48 hours, that they would start thinking about fixing the pelvis. When I made it through that, of course, they put me in a medical induced coma, to keep me from moving. And then a week later, they went in and did the pelvis reconstruction, which was 4 metal plates and a bunch of screws to hold it all together. And after about 2.5 weeks, they let me wake up. And when I woke up, the funny thing, when I woke up, my dad was there, and my dad is retired Air Force, and he worked as an airplane mechanic, and his hands are really rough from all the years of being a mechanic on the airplanes. And I knew it was him before I ever opened my eyes, because he was holding my hand, and I could feel his hands. And I woke up, and it was just for a mere few minutes, because the pain was so severe. I started to have a panic attack. I didn't realize that I had been crushed like I had, and that I had heart surgery and pelvis reconstruction, all these things. I just knew that the pain, I thought I was having a heart attack. I had broke ribs, so when you breathed in, it hurt really, really bad. And the pain was just unbearable. So I kept hitting the button, the magic button that was releasing my medicine. And I vaguely remember that moment of waking up. And as the weeks went on, because I was in the hospital for an extended period of time, I was bedbound for a total of 4 months. I was in a wheelchair, had to learn to walk again. Went from a wheelchair walker cane. And it was a very long process, and it was a very painful process. The first time they got me out of the bed, I was only able to sit for 3 minutes. That was the longest that I could stand the pain. So it was a very, very difficult time, and it was really, really hard. And I was really strong, and I have a great deal of faith. And I can remember, as I started to heal, that one day, Dr. George Alonzo, who did my pelvic reconstruction, looked at me and said, what do you want to do next? And I said, I want to walk into my living room for Christmas. And we met that goal. And then he said, what do you want to do now? And I said, I want to run. And he said, Julie, you have to accept there's some things you'll never be able to do again. And I got out with some friends and worked out and started, and I looked like Forrest Gump dragging my leg, because I only have half the feeling in my left leg to this day. But now I walk without a limp. And I said, my God doesn't work halfway, and I wanted to back up real quick, because I remember you were saying about patience and having what I have and not making it. Dr. Pacifico told my mom, she was talking to him, and she was thanking him, and he told her, he said, I'm not the reason. And I thought about that often, where he had told her, that this was more than just me, because at first I thought, it was God. Definitely God was involved. But you were involved. You were a wonderful trauma doctor. You had a wonderful trauma team. It wasn't just him. There were so many people, and you were always so special to me, because you were always so nice to me, and you were always so sweet, and I always remembered you. And I'll try not to cry again, because I always wanted to just thank somebody, and to thank you, and to thank him, and to look at the people that helped save my life and make this last 20 years possible, like I told you, and to see my children grow and get married. Sorry, and my grandchildren, and to be able to be a part. And I go back to where I started with the 3 minutes, because it does take 3 minutes to make those decisions when you're 911. When you're in a car, it takes 3 seconds to buckle up your seatbelt. And if I had done that day, then we might not be sitting here. And it was hard on me. It was hard on my family. It's been a long process that affects me to this day. They had to cut me from the back of my shoulder blade all the way under my left breast to do my open heart surgery. They had to put incision. They had to cut my back in 2 places, my front, to put in metal plates. Those things wear on you over time. And I've been blessed. I can run, I can play with my kids. Some people aren't that fortunate. 3 seconds, a 3-second decision to go 2 miles. It does happen within 2 miles of your home. And it's life-changing.
Yeah, it's just
So
amazing,
I just want
Julie.
to ask anybody watching to take that 3 seconds.
Yeah, we talked about, I talk about seatbelts a lot on this podcast and buckling up your children, make sure it's correct. And we talk about that. People don't realize that the majority of fatalities occur within 5 miles of home in accidents. It's where you think you're the safest, you think you know the road. But yeah, before you put the key in the ignition, like you said, it's less than 3 seconds. Click it, just buckle up. And I've always been a firm believer in seatbelts. I saw what it did, during the time of my year as a trauma surgeon, people that weren't wearing seatbelts. Now, people wearing seatbelts in a severe enough crash are going to have horrible injuries as well. But they make it to the hospital more often than not because they had their seatbelt. Those that don't have it get ejected. You're incredibly fortunate. It was an early time of the day. They called the helicopter. It wasn't 2 a.m. on a lonely road, nobody else around you. So yeah, your message, to me, I want to bring you on the show because I talk about seatbelts all the time. And, it's kind of like your mom and dad just beating it into you that do your homework, yeah, I'm not doing my homework. Well, I think this is, do your homework, put your seatbelt on, but have someone like you who is really a miraculous story and recovery. And not only that, but I wouldn't say part of the reason, a lot of the reason that you did so well. And today you're successful, you're doing great, you've raised a family, is you had a great faith and also that, but you had a will to survive. You never gave up and you were never, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? You took the challenges that you were given. And recovery for patients, be it cancer, trauma, the right mental attitude and not giving up and staying in the fight is what it takes. And you did that. You stayed in the fight. And, it was after 21 years, it was exciting to hear from you, because, the last time I saw you, you were in a wheelchair. So, to see you again today and to hear your story to me and to be able to have our listeners who think, I'm not wearing my seatbelt, or I'm not taking driving seriously, or I'm going to see if, I'm going to do something a little bit foolish in the car. To hear your story, I think it brings what I've been preaching and proselytizing in over 68 episodes of automotive safety. Your story and Jack Roush's story, his story is a little bit different, but your story, being an EMS person who thought it would never happen to them and just going down the hill 1.5 miles, and that's all it took.
Well, I just want to say, seeing you face to face, thank you so much for the role that you played. I really, really admire you and appreciate you and all that you did at UAB and that you continue to do.
Well, I thank you, and I really appreciate it. But I thank you for making the effort to reach out and to actually give me a call, and to say thank you, because that makes a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I would
Stephen.
say as an outsider, I've known Stephan for almost 35 years. We were both 12 when we met, and ish. But I've always admired Stephan for being a surgeon because what he deals with, especially on the trauma side, is very serious, and he really does make a difference and save people's lives. But I would imagine that it's only a small percentage of people, of your former patients, Stephan, that ever touch base and say, "Hey, thanks a lot." One thing I've noticed, I'm not a surgeon, but I am a physician, and this is probably less true for you, Stephan, but I will have a situation where I'll do something that's important and it actually does save somebody's life, and they have no idea. The only one that knows is me and the nurse and whoever else is in the room. Usually it's in the emergency room. So I think there's, even with you, Stephan, there have to be people out there that just have no idea exactly what happened. They were out, they don't really know, and in their mind they just had an operation, and they don't understand that really the only thing between them and death was you. So I'm sure it meant a lot to hear from Julie.
Oh, it meant a tremendous amount. And like you mentioned, a lot of patients, and Julie, I'm sure, can attest to this, that they have a little bit idea of what's going on, but it's the family members that sat with you, sat with the doctors, and it's the family members who really have a more immediate, real understanding of what's going on, because the patients are typically heavily sedated, they're under narcotics, and that fog of all that medication takes months to go away. And then, your body, our brains, from PTSD standpoint, our brains, they don't want to, our brain doesn't want to remember that event, but our body manifests symptoms of those events through anxiety and, situations. So our body does everything to forget it. Our brain wants to forget it, but our families bear a tremendous burden, and families of trauma victims bear a huge burden from the beginning. I'm sure, Julia, that was a lot.
I'm glad that you mentioned the PTSD part, because that is something that I had to deal with, and I still deal with. And this is, again, about the safety aspect. In a vehicle today, I grab the sides, I grab the dash. I'm scared of the side of the road, scared of driving in the rain. And my accident didn't happen in the rain, but my mind associated it because the grass was wet. It was early in the morning. And so there's all these little things that still affect you. And that's what I was getting at with over the 20 years. I mean, it doesn't go away. It doesn't end, and again, something that you can prevent so easily. But there's so many little things that continue over the years, and the PTSD is a huge part. And you're absolutely right. I don't remember how the accident happened. I don't remember months of my life from that time period between the narcotics that they gave me and different things. And as a matter of fact, I think I even told you, I elected to go through, once I got past that initial time, to go through the recovery process drug-free. I was offered to go to pain clinics and all those things, and to even take disability at 29 years old. And I didn't do it. I was too strong-willed, number one, and hard-headed, and was like, no, I'm 29. I'm not going to be disabled. I'm not going to live on drugs. And I overcame that aspect. But you do have so many things that stay with you over the years, and the mental, you can take the physical out of it. The mental aspect is huge, and it's a very, very hard thing to overcome. And it's something that bothers, like, even my husband. We're driving in a car and I'm like, slow down, stop, oh, get off the side of the road, just constantly, and driving him crazy. But I mean, he understands, but it is something that affects you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. You've got young kids that are drivers, and I think, I give these little safety tips on driving from things that I experienced and learned and saw in my patient population. And I'm hoping, I think those that listen to your story today, Julie, are going to make sure that everyone they know and everyone they love puts their seatbelts on. And
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just add that one of the great things about listening to Stephan's stories over the years is that it takes safety, which is really so theoretical. Put your helmet on, put your seatbelt on, be careful, look both ways. All those things are so theoretical. And the reality is we have to get somewhere. We're late. Someone is expecting us, and we have to be 2 places, and I have to get to this place by 9:07 and then the other place at 10:02. And you're so busy, and then the whole idea, all the lectures, all the lessons are so theoretical. Well, with Stephan's stories that I've heard over the years, this is not theoretical anymore. This is for real. And nothing for me, and I think our listeners too, is more real than someone who actually had to go through it. You two didn't meet at the grocery store. You met because you were on death's door, and Stephan helped save your life, and so did the team. This is not theoretical at all, and I think it makes much more of an impact for that reason.
Yeah.
I want to add one little note. I was doing 45 miles an hour when this happened. And I think that's important to add because, again, like you said, a lot of young kids getting in cars, speeding, thinking, nothing can happen to me. You seem invincible at a young age. 45 miles an hour is what I was doing when I had my accident.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's been wonderful having you. We talked on the phone, and you have a son who I hear is a budding car enthusiast, Bryson, and he was not happy with your choice of purchase of recent vehicle.
I can't wait to hear this.
You want me to get him?
Yeah. Well, you tell us about the car that you wanted versus what he wanted, and his rationalization for you. I think it's a good story.
Oh, when I got the Expedition.
Yeah.
Or which one that he wants when he gets older.
Yeah,
he told
you told me you bought the Expedition, and he's like, Mom, you need a muscle car because there's a lot of metal there. They're very safe.
Safe
versus
yes,
the Expedition.
Yes. Hang on one second. Let me get this little guy.
That's really funny. Yeah.
Bryson?
Get a muscle car because
There's a lot of metal. Yeah.
Translation. Get a car that I can drive.
But I admire Julie for coming on and telling her story. And I was cruising down the road in a Bullet, and I got this phone call, and I was floored. It just it was just such a
Come on in.
it was a very emotional conversation for the two of us. And to think here I was going to not take this call. So well, welcome Bryson to Cars on Call. How are you, young man?
Bryson.
Good. How are you?
I hear you're not happy with your mom's purchase of an Expedition. You thought she needed something a little bit cooler.
Yeah. I've been liking the car, but I still wish we would have got the other option.
I heard you like muscle cars.
The other one. Yeah.
What's your favorite muscle car?
I really like. I definitely would say the Mustang Boss 302 from like 1970.
Whoa, dude, man.
Ford
Yeah.
guy, Stephan, a
The Ford guy, man, right true to my heart. I'm a big Ford guy. I've got a 2019 Bullet Mustang.
That's
And
cool.
then I'm having a 427 Cobra
That's
built.
really cool. I love the Cobras.
So I'm having one of those.
I love the
built.
Cobras.
Well, we need more
They're really
people
cool.
of your generation that are interested in cars, because most people your age like the Japanese cars, but I'm glad you like big American muscle.
Yeah, a lot of them are into the JDM cars and stuff.
So
I like
when I was
just the full-blown American.
hey, I'm all with you there. I got a question for you, Bryson. So when I was a doctor, only patients ever cared about two things. Number one was they didn't care when I went to medical school, but they said, who's my team? And then who's my driver? So who's your team? Football
Who's your team?
Like what?
Football team.
Alabama.
There you go. All right. Now who's your driver? Who's your favorite race car driver?
I like Ken Block, but I'm sad because he died.
Oh yeah, Ken Block was great. He was the Hoonigan. He was really something else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right. Well, Julie and
Well,
Bryson.
can I tell you who this
Yes.
is? This is the doctor that helped save my life when I had my wreck all those years ago.
Thank you for saving her.
That guy.
You're welcome. No, yeah, it was what I did for a living, and it was brings everything full circle to see your mom like this today after 21 years.
Yes, you're doing great.
I think so. All right. Well, Julie and Bryson, it's been
Yeah.
wonderful having you on the show. I think,
Thanks
Steve, we're
for
about.
having it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think listeners, I hope you're moved today by Julie's story. And when you get behind the wheel that you think a little bit differently, put your seatbelts on and have fun driving and enjoy driving, spirited driving, but be careful and cognizant that things can go bad quickly, and just be safe out there. So remember to like, listen, subscribe, and tell your friends about the podcast. We want to keep this going, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Hey,
very
thank
much.
you, Julie. That was wonderful.
Thank you.